Birds, people, and the dogs that bring them together. This is episode number 25. My name is Bill, and you're tied to the Woe Post. This episode is a continuation of episode number 24, so if you haven't listened to that yet, I'd recommend just stopping right here, go back, listen to episode number 24. Actually, just go ahead and listen to episodes number 1 through 24, and then pick back up with this episode number 25, where we're going to talk about how to save the Poodle Pointer breed, or really any breed, and the role of breed clubs. And in addition to a host of other topics that Bob Farris, with his extensive history with bird dogs, has a lot of experience with. If you'd like to contact me, you can do so on Facebook or Instagram at The Woe Post, through email, bill@thewopost.com, or through my website, www.thewopost.com. And if you'd like to join the Woe Post community on Patreon, you can become a patron at patreon.com/thewopost. And let's stop the intro right there and pick back up with Bob and the creation of the North American Poodle Pointer Alliance.
Sitting around thinking about where the Poodle Pointer itself has come in the last 20 years. You know, Bill Athens and I, two of us went to the Czech Republic. And while we were over there sitting in a bar one night, we were talking about what's going to happen to this breed. I mean, we're over there looking at new breeding stock, thinking, how are we going to protect this breed from all the fools that are, as it gets popular, there's going to be a bunch of fools get involved. How are we going to protect it? So when we got back, we created the Poodle Pointer Alliance. It's called NAPPA, N-A-P-P-A. And when you look it up on the internet, you realize this is a very, very, very serious group of people. And then you look at the dogs that are on that website and all the prize one utility dogs now. And, you know, I don't really worry about the Poodle Pointer at all anymore. There's always going to be somebody that's going to kind of downbreed the breed, maybe out of greed or maybe out of ignorance, whichever, but they're not going to be able to ruin it. You couldn't ruin the Poodle Pointer. You couldn't ruin the short hair. You could ruin the small Munsterlander. You could ruin the vizslas. You could ruin the red setter.
Yeah.
Because there's not enough. So they need, and here's what potentially happens. I mean, there's a Poodle Pointer that was bred, I think, 25 times. This is a dog that didn't run in natural ability because it would not go in the water. And then it ran in utility and it earned a 160 something. And this dog has raised 25 litters of puppies. And anytime you see that dog's name on a pedigree, you can pretty well be guaranteed that's the worst dog on that pedigree. And if that were to happen to the small Munsterlander, you could devastate the breed. You'd just overrun it and you'd breed down. And you can almost look at progeny from this dog, and their progeny reports are much lower than any other Poodle Pointer that's ever made puppies. And so when you think about that, and some of these smaller breeds, they've got to be protected, and you've got to have breeders that are very conscientious and have the right spot in their heart for breeding dogs, not just the greed of making money or whatever.
That's the role of breed clubs too, whether it's, North American Poodle Pointer Alliance or Small Munsterlander Club of America. Their role is to maintain that breed standard and make sure that a breed council and a breed warden certify a breeding pair that they are the right dogs to be passing on the genes. And you're absolutely right. I mean, we're at a precipice right now with the Small Munsterlanders where we're working on full AKC recognition. And we're doing that because we have to, because if we don't do it, somebody else will, and it might not be the right people.
Exactly.
We're doing it, but the problem is these dogs, these little small Munsterlanders, are gorgeous dogs. Yep. And the more people that get to see them, the more people are gonna want them, and we're gonna have to make sure we control. If a non-hunter wants a small Munsterlander, I would prefer to sell dogs only to hunters. But there might be a good non-hunting home for a puppy, but that dog might not ever need to be bred unless you've got a way to demonstrate hunting aptitude, right?
That's where breeding restrictions come in. And what amazes me is it's real easy to jump on the bandwagon and start crucifying the breeders of poodle pointers that are not part of the breeder alliance. I've gone back and looked at the data in the NAVDA database, all the litters of puppies produced for the past 12 months. And as I look through that list, and NAVDA posts the father and the mother and their test scores.
Right.
So you can look at that. And within the alliance, a male has to have earned 175 points or more in utility. A female has to have earned at least 105 points in natural ability. Those are the minimums. So I go through that list and I see 80% of the litters that I see, I don't know who in the hell the owner, the breeder is. I don't know him, and I don't recognize it. But when I look at all of the males and all of the females, they're being bred to the same standard that the alliance breeds to. And I think the peer pressure the alliance has put on the poodle pointer community is, you better test your dogs and you better test them, or you're going to get beat up behind your back. And so it's not like you have to get a puppy from one of the alliance breeders to guarantee you're going to get a nice dog. You can get one from a breeder that's not part of that. I will have to say, though, the cream of the crop breeders that I know are all alliance breeders. I mean, we've got Dan Kremers in New Jersey is just beyond the charts knowledgeable about dogs. I don't know how many 204 prize one dogs he's trained and owned, and he knows all the short hairs. He knows, and then you've got down in Maryland, you've got Mark Olcott and Ryan Bird. Both those guys, their dogs are versatile champions. Stephen Lundy in Texas, one of his dogs is a versatile champion. Both of his dogs that he got from me are prize one UT dogs. I mean, we've got some really good breeders around the country, really good. I don't have to worry about the poodle pointer, getting too popular and ending up in the toilet. It's not going to happen. There's just too many really good, and a lot of people that aren't part of the alliance are extremely. I mean, why would anybody join the alliance if they're going to have one litter of puppies in their entire life? Why not just have the litter?
Right.
And and that. So I don't get too hung up on that. And I figure in this day and age, if somebody's stupid enough to buy a dog that's not tested, that's their problem. My God, I mean, the information is out there, how to buy a good car, or how to buy a good lawnmower, or how to buy a good hunting dog. You just got to do the research.
There are a lot of conversations all the time about, people that don't put a lot of stock into hunt test scores. And what I always come back to is I ask, how else do you have a fair assessment of a dog's hunting aptitude? And unless you actually go and you see that dog, that dog, or the pair. If it's a dog that's 3 states away because it's an uncommon breed, and you want a puppy from that litter, maybe it's just the only litter that has availability or something like that. How do you know what you're buying without hunt test scores?
That's it. See, I did a podcast a while back, and I was asked how much I weigh test scores, NAVDA test scores, and I said, well, I don't have to weigh them like the guy in Maryland does. I don't. I said, because you come out and get into my world and see what I get to do. My hunting season starts September 1 and ends February 1, and I'm hunting. I hunt over 100 days a year. I hunt chuckers and huns and quail and pheasants and ducks and geese, and I get to use what I see in the field. That's my biggest reference, is what I see. I said, but take a guy that doesn't have the opportunities that I do because they live in a different geographic area. They don't have all that in their backyard. I mean, a lot of times when I'd go hunting, I might start out and hunt quail, then I'd go hunt chuckers for a while, and on the way home I'd stop and look for a pheasant or two. But it's because of where I live. And if a guy lives in Texas, Oklahoma, they have a whole different, I don't know what's in their backyard, but my point was, I rely more on what I see. When I see dogs do things like what I described Tucker doing, I go, that's the kind of dog I want to breed. And I've seen some unbelievable dog work. Most people don't realize when you hunt chukars, a dog has to stay out of sight of those birds, which means they have to point their coveys 50 to 100 yards away. And if they're not willing to do that, they're just going to do nothing but bust birds and screw up the day for you. So when you start seeing a dog on point, and you gotta get out in front of them 100 yards to flush the birds, you realize that dog's got the IQ to figure out. It just kind of happens after a while. They figure these things out. Well, when I see things like that, that's the kind of dog I want to breed. I see a dog that can fill my game bag. It's like, yeah, that dog deserves to have puppies. But if you live in Maryland, that's not the case. I don't know what's in Maryland.
Geese, lots of geese.
Yeah, you're right. And I gave the reference to, I said, if you just totally hang your hat 100%, and that's it, on NAVDA utility or a versatile champion, understand those tests are very, very scripted. In other words, if you're willing to put in enough time, you're going to get a prize one. You can take an average dog and get a prize one utility with it. Trust me, I've done it. It's because you know what the test is. You know exactly what they want to see. So you can, if you're willing to train every day for a year, you're going to get a top score. And you can do that with a below average dog. It'd be just like going into a college classroom and the professor handing you a piece of paper and saying, this will be your final exam. Go ahead and study it for 2 months. And then in 2 months, we're going to all take it together. Well, that's kind of what a utility test or a NAVDA test is. So it's the best that we have, though. It really is the best that we have. I wish NAVDA would have changed and upgraded their test years and years ago, but they're not willing to do it. And there's a test that Joe Schmutz, Jeff Funke, and a group of us years ago promoted at a NAVDA workshop. We promoted raising the bar a little bit in natural ability. So there's no place in natural ability that the dog has to have a bird in its mouth. And to me, that's hugely important. What's a dog do when it's got a bird in its mouth? Does it run off with it? Will it not retrieve it? Does it chew it up? But at no point are you guaranteed that every NA dog has a bird in its mouth. And I've often said I would be so embarrassed if any of my retriever people ever saw me at a NAVDA test throwing a bumper in the water 6 feet out and asking my dog to swim and then calling that a water dog. Why in the hell why don't they use a dead bird and have at least a 20-yard retrieve? And so we proposed all this like 15, 20 years ago. And, the reply was, well, we can't change the test because it would change the data. It wouldn't be the same as the data in 1966 when we started. And it's like, the dogs are different now. The dogs aren't even the same dogs. The training is different. The utility test has been changed somewhat, but so now there is a new testing group called the Federation. And back when we made these proposals, Joe Schmutz, Jeff Funke, myself, Chuck Johnson, we were all sitting in a bar in Reno, and the discussion came up about, well, how would we change the natural ability? And, the first thing was you run the dog for 15 to 20 minutes without any birds and see if it can hunt. Why do we have to take a dog right straight to a bird to jazz him up? That dog, if it's got the right desire, it should hunt without having to have a bird on the end of its nose. And so, and at the water, get rid of the dummies. Get rid of the dummies. Make a retrieve. And so those two guys, Jeff Funke and Joe Schmutz, have both created this Federation test, which now there's a lot of very prominent NAVDA people starting to test dogs there. They went to a 10-point system instead of a 4-point system, which gives a lot more information about what happened. And you know, an example is, as a judge, you watch a dog perform in the field, and then the three judges get together and you go, what'd you have on that search? You go, well, I had a low 4. Well, what the hell's that? Do you have a 4 or a 3? Well, I had a low 4. Well, if you had a 10-point system, you wouldn't hear that. The guy'd say, well, I had an 8.
Right.
It gives a lot more information. You know, having to see a dog chase a bird to judge desire, for God's sake, come on. Chasing a bird isn't the desire that I want to see a dog performance-wise. I want to see a dog tearing up the field looking for birds. And I would guess that in today's world that over 50% of the NA dogs that are run in natural ability by experienced NAVHDA people, they've already been force retrieved. The dog's 12 months old, it's probably been force retrieved, and that's why it goes right in the water. NAVHDA, I think, would do themselves a favor by upping their test. But if the Federation continues to see more and more and more popularity, then NAVHDA is going to have to do something, because you're starting to see the top NAVHDA people go to the Federation. Kyle Hoff, that's where he judges, and it's where he runs his dogs. Jeff Funke. There's just a lot of interest in the Federation tests.
The Federation tests are really interesting to me. It's, you know, they are few and far between right now, just because of, you know, there's not a lot of demand. So that makes it a little bit challenging. From the information perspective, it's very interesting to me, but it's also a little bit scary to me, because I know that my max score dog, who's racked out here by my feet, is not going to be a maximum score dog on a Federation test.
Yeah, but that shouldn't matter. Now, you know, the first dog I ever trained and ran in a NAVHDA test was an SM, small Münsterländer.
So I'm glad you brought it up. And when we were talking before, you said it was the best dog that you've ever experienced in your life, right?
Well, not quite. but it was. But I'll tell you something. I looked, and I've looked at what people have done in the dog world. Bodo bred English pointers to his Pudelpointers. I don't know, 3 or 4 different times he did that. And you look at the short hairs. The short hairs didn't cross the big pond white. How in the hell did we get white short hairs? Well, it's English pointer. And Americans are, you know, there's been Labradors bred into Pudelpointers. Where in the hell do you think the black came from? I always looked at an SM and said, because I trained a lot of setters that were out of Toccoa Mountain Sunrise. Sunrise was one of the most fabulous hunting machines I've ever seen. He was just a big, powerful English setter that Robertson's kennel ran in field trial. He ran in the national every year. I always said, if you could breed an SM to Sunrise, my God, you'd have 12 o'clock tails on a great water dog with a great personality. And because they do, they have great personalities. They're fun dogs. And, you know, if you're going to go out and you're going to hunt, people ask me, what's the best grouse dog you think you could own? I said, well, unquestionably, it's either an SM or an LM. They hunt tight enough, and they got great noses. They're great retrievers. Their pointing is a little bit not as pretty because their tails are down.
Yep, a little soft on the point, and they do tend to crowd birds when they're young. Yep. And you know, I think it takes them a little longer to learn to not crowd a bird than some of the other breeds that are out there.
Yeah, well, that's kind of, you got to kind of pick your breed for where and what you hunt. You know, because where I live and we hunt chuckers and huns so much, you've got to have a dog that's willing to stay way the hell off of birds. If they try to get within 10 feet of a covey of chuckers, those birds are gone. They're in the air. And so, dogs just learn that. They got to have a good nose. And I was judging in Ohio, and there's a guy named Alan Fazenbacher showed up with a red setter. And I had no idea what the hell a red setter was. It was an Irish setter? And he goes, no, it's a red setter. And I watched that dog, the little dog named, he called him Hooley. Unbelievable dog. Unbelievable. And he got a 112. And so when I got home, Alan called me and he said, I'd like to give you Hooley. I'd love to see one of my dogs out west hunting chukars. Because, boy, this dog, when he went on point, his tail was literally 12 o'clock, and he was just like a beautiful statue. And I said, Alan, I'd love to have that dog, but if I had a red setter in my kennel, people think I was breeding it to my poodle pointers. I can't do it,
Yeah.
So I had a friend up in McCall, a minister that had a red setter years ago. And I talked to him and I said, Jeff, would you be interested? And he said, hell yes. And I said, well, Alan's willing to sell Hooley and a female for $400. You just got to get them from Pennsylvania to anyway. So he bought the two dogs and Jeff bred those two dogs a couple of times. And I ended up training pups every now and then out of that breeding. My God, they were nice dogs. I mean, they weren't water dogs though.
No.
But, oh, God, they were good field dogs.
And that's what they're bred for.
Yeah.
Pretty much all of the English or the UK breeds were not bred to, to have a strong affinity for water. They're field dogs.
And that's kind of where a lot of people, if in a variety of podcasts I've done, people say, well, if you couldn't have a poodle pointer, what would you own? I said, maybe a vizslas. If I could get one like Bridgette Neilsen's. But so many of them are so soft. But I know I can tell you this. I judged Bridgette Neilsen in the only test they ever had in Nevada. She shows up with this vizslas. She didn't even know how to spell dog, but she was a wildlife biologist that bought this vizslas, and it was a dog named Jake. It was sensational. She now is one of the top NAVDA judges, breeders of vizslas, lives in North Dakota, lives in South Dakota. I know I would be totally satisfied with one of her dogs until I went to the Snake River. It's a different deal. This whole different deal when you hunt waterfowl, and I've had this conversation with Dan Kremers. He hunts extreme conditions on the East Coast. He hunts with a poodle pointer. And I mean, you see the pictures of his dogs on these big ice jams and stuff. And it's like, wow, that's where you have to have a Chesapeake. Bridgette's dogs are excellent field dog. And if you were just hunting ducks, jump shooting ducks and hunting kind of marshy stuff, probably be just fine.
So, I've got plenty of pictures of my poodle pointer where his whole beard is iced over and, he's been out in the cold and the wet and, doing his thing. But, when it's super cold, I put a vest on him and they dry very quickly.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because of the type, as wiry as they are and as rough as their coat is. I don't know what the deal is, but I know I sent him on a crippled goose retrieved. And we thought we lost this goose. We saw it when we were heading back to the boat launch. And so I sent him from my boat out on that goose and he retrieved the goose and, got him back in the boat and continued back to the boat launch. And, we were back to the boat launch 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes later.
He was dry.
And got the boat out of the water and, took the vest off of him. Yeah. And underneath the vest, he was dry and warm already.
Yeah.
And, I was thinking, it was super cold that day. And I was thinking, all right, I'm going to get the vest off of him, throw it in the back of the truck and get the dog inside the truck and with the heater going. But there was no need for that. I actually let him go and run. And he went out and roosted up a turkey.
I hunted my Chesapeake one time before I had poodle pointers when I was field trialing retrievers, and I showed up with these guys. We had breakfast and then we went duck hunting, and we were just hunting on the Boise River, which isn't a huge river, but I was the only guy that brought a dog. And these guys were field trialers. They each had labs. They left their dogs home because it was 12 degrees. And I had my Chessie, and again, there was so much slush floating on top of the river, you couldn't put a decoy out. So we had to put the decoys in the snow along the bank. And that Chessie had come back with a duck. I had to rub his eye because he'd just turn into an icicle because he had, long hair and his eyes would freeze shut. his eyelids would freeze shut. I'd have to rub his eyes and get the ice off of him so he could see. I never got to shoot a duck all day. These two guys, and I'm thinking, you guys, you left your damn labs at home, and I bring my Chessie to do all the work. But
they can do it.
They can. Oh, yeah. They could. I that was one dog I couldn't bring in the house because he'd stink you right out of the house. It's the kind
really.
They have that oil in their hide or in their skin, some kind, and all of a sudden you go, what the hell stinks? That's a damn dog. I think if they were in the house all the time, Linda Harger's probably the top Chesapeake person that's ever lived. I don't know how many field champions she's made in her life, but her dogs live in the house and they don't stink. I think they probably get used to it, but no, there's a distinct odor that a Chessie will give off if it's an outdoor living dog, and then you bring it in the house.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, I was gonna say I don't remember my dog being that bad. I mean, he got skunked once, and that was bad. Certainly, there were times he got into stuff where it wasn't pleasant to be around him until after you got him cleaned off. But I don't remember him just holding an unpleasant odor like that. And he lived to be about 15 and a half.
Really? Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, he was an old man when we ended up putting him down. He was ready. So there was old dog situation.
That's always tough. Tucker was 15 when I had to say goodbye to him. He was old. My daughter's little dog that was out of Tucker was 17, and
wow.
That's from about 14 on though. It's all geriatric nursing home type life. You have to help him in and out of the car and but it's sad when you see people end up losing a dog though at 8 for, some reason. But
now for your dogs that lived that long, particularly, I'm talking about the pointing dogs that lived that long, how long were they hunting?
Well, Tucker hunted up to 13. I'd take him when he was 13, I'd take him to North Dakota, but I wouldn't let him hunt. I'd let him just do an evening hunt or something. I didn't turn him loose because he wouldn't have been able to walk the next day because he was going to do his thing, and next day he wouldn't hardly be able to get out of bed. But I took him. I think he was 13 the last time he went to North. I go to North Dakota every year. He got a lot of time in that state.
Are you looking for specific structural traits in your breeding dogs to produce those long hunting dogs, poodle pointers?
Not really. I think that they I think poodle pointers and short hairs and wire hairs, those three breeds have a little more endurance in the long run just because of the way they're built. They're a little more streamlined and whatnot. And yeah,
they're very leggy too.
Yeah.
So they've got that going for them. I think, in our smaller dogs and the small Munsterlanders, we're, at least with my breeder network, we're very focused on structure, making sure that we think we're doing the right thing and producing the dogs that are going to last, that'll be out in the field still hunting at, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old.
I've talked to Kris Hill and, Melissa Hers. I mean, she's not with us anymore. Melissa's not, but both of those two women were extremely helpful to the small Munsterlanders. Melissa, hell, she'd go to Germany. She'd take her dogs and go back to Germany and test them over there. And Kris that's kind of her life has been, her dog game stuff. And when you get breeds that have somebody that's willing to go to bat for the breed for all the right reasons and not the financial reasons, it's so wonderful for the breed. I mean, there's a number of people that like I talk about Bridgette Neilsen all the time. What she's done for the for the vizsla is incredible, because vizslas, when I was training gun dogs, I probably trained at least 10. And they was the most embarrassing dogs I ever trained were vizslas, because they were spooky, they were gun shy, they were bird shy, they were people shy, there was some problem with every single one of them. And then here comes Bridgette, and she either got really, really lucky, and then she hooked up with Cheryl Tepp and the Martinsons, and who are really good vizsla people. And that's what it takes. It takes a group. And if one person just isn't going to make it happen. It takes a group of people to have the right conscious, I guess, about what they're going to be doing and what they're going to leave behind, when they're gone. And my pride in the Poodle Pointer today is Stephen Lundy, Todd Bauer, Brandon Smith, Mark Olcott, Ryan Bird, especially Dan Kremer, Jason Mix. These guys are carrying the torch, and they're doing it the right way. And they love working together as a team. I mean, so I know that the Poodle Pointer is in good hands. And there's always going to be a couple of people floating around that are, there's an outfit down in that breeds a whole ton of dogs, and I don't know if they're any good or not. I mean, I have no idea, but I look at it that, again, in this day and age, if you can't do your homework to find the best shotgun, the best hunting dog, the best lawnmower, because the research is all there. All you got to do is do it. But there's a lot of people that probably intelligent-wise don't deserve a really excellent hunting dog. That gives them a place to go.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
One thing that I was thinking about, and I was having this conversation with somebody else recently too, but when we think about some of the people that have really kind of led the way for different breeds, and as you're kind of rattling off people from other breeds, so many of them are women, and that's what's just really interesting to me is I don't know what it is that makes that person the right person, but when you talk about Chris Hill, you talk about Bridgette Neilsen and all these other people that these aren't, when you think about a hunter, if you just have an image of a bird hunter in your mind, it's going to be some guy.
Sure. Definitely.
But then when you think about these stewards and these ambassadors that have had a big impact on these hunting breeds, women are definitely overrepresented there and doing a lot of good for us.
Women make better dog trainers than men. Women make better horse trainers than men. There's just something about their voice, their kindness, how they come across. I haven't met a woman yet that could hunt with me, with Jeff Funke, with some of us out west that really have hunted. I mean, I have a grand slam of sheep. My house is full of dead animals hanging on the wall. I'm a hunter. I mean, I'm an absolute hunter. You get on my website and you click on the YouTube channel and you look at chukar hunting and you realize this guy has really put some miles on his boots chasing chukars around. Well, you don't see women doing that. You just don't. But if you want the kindness and the training, give me a woman. I wrote an article not long ago. I listened to Clyde Vetter. He trained a dog, a Cedarwod Poodle Pointer, and ran it and got a utility prize one. And he sent me a little video off of his phone. And he said, "Hey, I'm cleaning off my phone. I thought maybe you'd like to see this of Ruger." And Ruger's standing on point, and he walks up. They flush the bird. They shoot the bird. And then he starts talking to Ruger. And he goes, "Ruger, you're the man, Ruger. Yeah, you're the man." And he's building him up. Never sent him. And then he sent him, and he brings the bird back. And again, this soft, congratulating voice. And I'm thinking to myself, that's why Linda Harger is such a great dog trainer, because she can She can tip a dog upside down when she has to, but she can also kiss its butt and make it feel her emotions. Most men can't do that. They just can't. They don't have it in them to sweet talk a dog. It's like, nah, I got to be gruff. And that just doesn't work in a lot of ways. But I listened to Clyde talk to that dog. I actually wrote an article for NAVDA about the soft voice in training and how most people don't realize you got to have that to be a good trainer. You've got to make a dog happy with what it's doing. And that's the difference. That's why women are such great dog trainers, I think. I mean, I competed against some great women in field trials. And I remember one time I was running a field trial in Salt Lake City, and there's a guy named August Belmont from Belmont Racetrack there, or from the Belmont family, Eastern family, and he was running a Chesapeake named Beaumark South Bay, and I had my Chessie was kind of related to it, and so I was chatting with him and about his dog. Did you get it from John Lundy? And he said, yeah, blah blah blah. And he also had a dog named Super Chief. Now, if you get to studying Labradors, what's the most famous retriever ever? Super Chief. There was a couple of other ones along the way, but Super Chief by far. And anyway, I was talking to August, and I said, well, was he hard to train? Was Super Chief, how much different was he to train than the Chessie, Beaumark? And he goes, I didn't train Super Chief. My wife did. Really? Yeah, I ran him, but a pro ran him, but he said my wife trained him. I'm like, are you kidding me? Because you start learning about Latin. When I left the Hall of Fame, Jerry asked me. He said, "No, I wasn't even at the Hall of Fame. We were just talking on the phone." He said, "I'm gonna quiz you to see what you really know." He said, "Who is the best English pointer, breeder, blah, blah, blah." And I said, well, Christ, that's got to be Bob Whaley. I said, I think it was Farrell Miller. So he knew right then that I knew dogs. He said, well, what about labs? Who's the top lab? And I said, well, River Oaks Corky won the national more than probably any dog. But I said, I think Super Chief. So he knew I knew dogs. I just the different breeds and stuff. So when I had the chance to talk to August about Super Chief, and I find out his wife, who doesn't handle dogs even, did all the training. Maybe he was BSing me, I don't know. But when I go out and train with Linda, when I have a training problem and I need to evaluate something that's going on, I go talk to Linda Harger. And she's a Chessie pro. And like I say, she's made 5 or 6 field champions on Chesapeakes. That's a hell of a task. I don't know. When I competed with, I think back and I think, Christ, some of the top, when I was running retrievers in the early 70s, Val Walker was running Goldens, and there was a lot of women, very, very, very successful, but they don't hunt. I mean, they don't have that bloodthirstiness that I kind of had in me. You don't see women wanting to kill an elk every year and needing to kill 4 sheep and a goat and all the stuff that I've done. But I would have to say that a lot of what I've learned from women about training, and it's that soft, happy voice.
I talked to Deb Moline, who's a Brittany trainer and breeder, a few weeks ago, and she was talking to me about Nastra. So she runs all of her dogs in Nastra, and she's very competitive. She's very, very good.
Yeah.
And she said, well, just up the road from me, we've got the Nastra. I think it's their national headquarters, but it's only maybe 40 minutes up the road from me. And she says, you really ought to be running your dogs in Nastra. It's easy for you. It's right there. And I guess she comes up here pretty often to run her dogs. And I said, I don't know if I can, because I don't know if I'd want to be out in the field with you at the same time. I'm pretty sure you would destroy me.
Well, yeah, I mean, you see it all the time. Like I say, you just gotta. Somebody the other day I was having a conversation, and it had NAVDA came up, and they said they're so disgusted with NAVDA because NAVDA's trying to become a woman's organization or a little kids organization. Like, who's the youngest person that can earn a 112? And it's like, I said, that's just good family stuff, though. My daughter, I'll never forget my daughter when she was in high school, and I had a couple of dogs to run and NAVDA tests, and Bodo was the senior judge, and I said, Brooke, you're going to run these dogs tomorrow. She said, okay. And I said, why are you going to have her run them? And I said, look, because Bodo's going to be staring at her and not watching the dog, and if the dog screws up, he ain't going to know it, because he was such a. But she was her ability. I mean, she barrel raced and team roped and did all the cowgirl stuff when she was in high school, and so her and dogs, she had a great relationship. But did she hunt? No, not really. But she knew how to manage dogs really, really well. So I, never sell them short. And for NAVDA to find that they need to cater more and more and more to women, I think that's good.
And how is that hurting anybody else if somebody wants their daughter to run their dog in NA or in any test? How is that? How's that hurting me if somebody wants her daughter? I fail to see it, so I don't understand why somebody would get emotional about that. I look at it as, hey, you know what? Here's a kid who is getting exposed to dogs and may be a dog handler or trainer or a hunter or somebody, but it's another person that we can bring into our community, which
I can't tell you how thrilled I am when somebody shows up to get their puppy and they bring their kids, and I hand the puppy to the kids. Can I go, are you going to be going out with your dad? Yeah, I'm taking hunter safety right now. That's so wonderful, and because if we don't pay attention, we're going to end up like Europe eventually, where there won't be any hunting, and it's all. Luckily, where I live, there's so damn much federal land to hunt. I mean, it goes on and on and on and on. But where a lot of people hunt, there isn't any, so it's all private, and that's going to be the curse to hunting, is the availability of land and just the opportunity for kids, or the sport kind of dies off.
Yeah, when you ask my kids if they're going hunting with dad, their answer will be maybe.
Yeah.
But if you ask my son if we're going turkey hunting, he's there. He's got a shotgun. He's in camo. He's ready to go. So we'll get him there.
Well, I think turkey hunting is what helps get kids involved. I mean, you can't take a kid chucker hunting. It's physically too hard, and they're going to get bored, and they're not going to want to go a second time, because you got to know how to hunt the birds. You've got to know, you got to have that experience. But any kid can be successful turkey hunting. I have some property on the Boise River, and I wrote a letter about 5 years ago to the Idaho Fish and Game, and I said, I have one of the nicest places to hunt turkeys. And I said, but you have to draw a tag to hunt there. And why don't you open this up to youth hunting for the first 2 weeks, and just any youth? And then after that, then have your draw for the adults. And I said, if you're not paying attention, any kid can go turkey hunting, and they can go after school in the evening or weekends, and they don't have to, because most adults in Idaho, they travel to hunt turkeys. They go spend the night, camp out or whatever. But anyway, and lo and behold, and I wrote this up with a Fish and Game guy, and lo and behold, now they have a youth turkey season for 2 weeks, and it's for any youth, anybody 18 or under. Like, all they got to do is buy a turkey tag, and that's what's going to hook kids, is because turkeys are easy. Maybe not, you don't have to, you have to be with an adult that can help you get a turkey, whatever. But, I've got a friend that, Paul Walden, I'll bet Paul has helped 30, 40 kids over the years get turkeys. He loves doing it. He introduced them to hunting. And So yeah, and there's turkeys everywhere. Every state damn near has turkeys now.
When I hear you say turkeys are easy, I had kind of a rough go at it this year. I did end up getting one, but when you say turkeys are easy, I'm just like, I don't know.
Well, when I talk to avid turkey hunters like Paul Walden, I'll say, I don't know, you guys are doing it all wrong. I don't really get it. I said, I just go over along the river and I walk along and I look at the ground and I find some turkey poop on the ground and I go, okay, they're roosting right straight up there in that tree. That's where I need to be at daylight, and I can just shoot him right out of the tree. And they look at me and they go, Bob, that ain't how you do it. You call them in. I go, well, why would you call them in when you can just shoot them out of a tree? but I've shot one turkey, and I actually accidentally got two with this one shot. And I told the guy, so I ain't going turkey hunting without taking my dog. And old Dusty brought back the second one that I crippled. I didn't, just kind of an accident, the way they bop up.
Right.
But my grandkids, each of them have shot, I don't know how many turkeys, and they can't wait for turkey season. They're both out of college now, and they're still very avid turkey hunters.
I had somebody tell me once a few years ago, the thing about turkey hunting is they say you're not supposed to shoot them out of the roost, but I find that they taste the same.
Yeah. Well, I just have always been, I want to hunt with my dog. That's, even duck hunting, they're not going to be pointed, but I've got to call them, and that's another thing. I was talking to Dan Kremer a while back, and I said, we were talking about, okay, how do you identify kind of the non-hunter, and I said, well, when you want to make sure a guy is going to hunt waterfowl, first thing you ask him is, well, what kind of duck call do you blow? And if he doesn't know, he's not a duck hunter, because every avid duck hunter has his favorite duck call. And I said, then the upland guy, well, what kind of shotgun do you shoot? Or, what size shot do you shoot? Or, you can always ask a few questions to feel somebody out. And, when they start stuttering, well, I remember one time a guy pulled in our driveway and he had a great big Hummer and he had license plates. He was from Sun Valley, Idaho, and he got out and he was all decked in black and blue camo, and his wife got out and she had a great big bonnet on her head like she's going to the Kentucky Derby. And I looked over at LaFay and I said, who's that? And she said, I think those are the people that want to come look at your dogs. I said, oh. And she just looked back at me and she said, no way. They're not getting one of my, ain't getting one of my puppies.
Oh man, sometimes you can just tell, right?
Oh yeah.
Well, hey Bob, we're gonna wrap this up, I think. Can you go ahead and leave us with some closing thoughts on Pudelpointers and just about whatever you want, I guess.
I've dealt with so many breeds of hunting dog because I train dogs, I judge dogs, that I would be the last guy to ever say that the best hunting dog you can own is a poodle pointer. I would have to say, as long as they're being bred for the right reasons, they're going to be a really excellent house dog, family dog for your kids. And people need to understand. One of the things that I've learned is coming back from the Czech Republic and Austria, when I went over there and looked at dogs, and I visited every kennel in Germany, every kennel in Czech Republic, every kennel in Austria, and I've imported some dogs out of the Czech Republic. I think that the Czech Republic is a very, very great place to get a dog. They're not as aggressive at all. I mean, they're cupcakes, compared to say some of the German dog. You got to be careful when you start pulling dogs out of Germany, because they use them for a different reason. And I don't know, that's the one fear that I have is in this day and age is having an aggressive dog that attacks a little kid. I mean, my God, I don't know that there's enough insurance to cover you, when something like that happens. So people need to be, and that's the beauty of NAVDA tests, is a judge handles your dog and checks its teeth and its coat and whatnot. And if it's an aggressive dog, something stupid's going to show up, and that dog's going to get noted as being aggressive. And that's the dog that should never be bred. Because, I've got, and most of our versatile breeds are not at all aggressive, not at all, and that's probably my biggest fear, is the stupidity of some people not understanding, though, that, there is a breeder or two that breeds poodle pointers, and they have aggressive dogs, and they've been noted to be aggressive at NAVDA tests. So I think since I train dogs of all breeds, I could pretty much own and hunt any of the versatile breeds. I'm not a lab fan, or not even a Chessie fan anymore, but I don't know. I just like good dogs, really good dogs. One of the things people should take the time, if they're looking for another hunting dog, they should take the time to learn how to evaluate a pedigree. A while back I said, you can look at a pedigree, and if there's a dog on that pedigree, there's usually one dog you can say, well, this is the worst dog on the pedigree, and it might be in the 6th or 8th generation. Well, who cares? Because its coefficient of relationship is so low, its DNA is not going to end up in those puppies. But when that dog's up in the 2nd or 3rd generation, bad news. That's bad news. You can almost look at adult dogs and then look at puppies and see the DNA coming from the grandparents and the parents, the similarities. And the same thing with people. You can see the same thing. I mean, people see me and my son. They see me and my dad, and it's just DNA's puts a stamp, and people need to learn how to read a pedigree. I've seen there are pedigrees where the dogs are inbred, totally inbred, and people don't understand that. You do not want to have the grandfather be the same on each side of the pedigree. You can't have the same grandpa on both sides. You can't have.
Nope.
And I mean, I see it all the time. And what's sad is it can mistakenly happen when you think you're line breeding and you're not. You're inbreeding. And there's a fine line in there. Bob Whaley wrote a great book called The Making of Snakefoot, where he defines what's inbreeding. And he was a genetics kind of guru, so he understood it. And, that's a lot of breeders. There's a couple of poodle pointers that are totally inbred, and they're being bred. But I think the most of the people that are in the poodle pointer world, like all the alliance breeders, they know who these people are, and they just stay away from those lines. And every breed's going to have that. Every breed.
Well, hopefully the breeders and the breed club are working hard to keep everybody educated and making sure that we're all making the right decisions.
Well, the greatest thing that we have in today's world are the softwares that, I have software called BreedMate. You plug in the potential mother and the potential father, and it calculates the coefficient of inbreeding on 10 generations, which is 2,046 dog entries. So that's the part you can go to the Napa website, and it'll educate you. How do you understand a breed mate demonstration on a potential breeding? And it'll educate you. So then if you're going to buy a dog, tell the breeder, I want to see the breed mate on these two dogs. If he can't supply it, it's probably not where you want to be getting a dog, because you really should be capable of seeing how close is that breeding. In other words, is it a line breeding, an outbreeding, or an inbreeding? And there's a lot to learn about breeding, a lot of education that that breeders need to know and have, but they should be able to pass that on and encourage their customers that, okay, this is what I'm going to do for you. And you're not going to end up with a dog that's going to die at 4 years old from Addison's disease or Cushing syndrome because it's not inbred. And that's what happens. Inbreeding just promotes all those recessive genetics right up to the front, and learn how to buy a dog effectively.
How can people contact you if they want to learn more about Cedarwoods or about poodle pointers in general or about Napa?
I send a lot of information when somebody emails me. I tell everybody, go to a website, pudelpointer.org. That's pretty easy to remember. If you can spell pudelpointer.org. And it lists all of the approved kennels right there. They're all there. Mine's the top one because I guess I'm the oldest. but I have an extremely useful website, and the pudelpointer.org is extremely useful because it's got all kinds of good information about how to evaluate a breed mate software. It lists all of the top, I think there's maybe 30 breeders in the United States. So you can go through the list and go, I live in Alabama. Oh, here's a guy in Florida. Here's another guy in Alabama. Here's a guy in Texas. So you can, and I can guarantee you, nobody's allowed to be part of that group that's not first class. I mean, there's been a number of people eliminated because of breeding problems that they've had. And so that's the first. And if you wanted to find my website, like I say, I'm on that website. You go click on breeders and there I am. And I send out a lot of stuff to people. One of the things I don't do, though, I don't ship puppies by air. You got to come to Boise, Idaho to get a pup from me. That gets a little expensive. So if you live in the South, you're probably better to get it from a good quality alliance breeder down in your neck of the woods. I don't think there's a breeder on that website, 30 breeders, that if I had to get the last dog I got to own in my entire life, I would be very comfortable to get it from any of those breeders because they've had to follow the same rules I have for, to be part of that group. And that's the important part right there. And that's why these breed clubs with different breeds, there's a wire hair alliance. If you were looking for a wire hair and there's a good group of wire hair breeders. If you're looking for a vizslas, there's a good group, and they all work as a team, and that's what promotes the good dogs is the teamwork of a dozen people instead of just one person sitting out there trying to do their own thing.
That's great advice, Bob. The cooperative breeder networks are where you want to go to find your quality dog.
I wrote a book about 5 years ago, and you can find it on Amazon. Just type in Bob Farris book, boom, there it is, and for $30. And it talks a lot about the software that's available that breeders should use if they're a high-end breeder. They should have some kind of software that they're using, and it gives a whole rundown of how to train a dog and what to do, a schedule, what to do at 8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks, clear a year old. And not that I'm a genius, but I think it's probably the best. Even if you're, I have people that are short hair breeders that recommend it to their puppy buyers because it gives them something to go back to. How do you introduce the gun to a dog? How do you introduce it to retrieving in the water? How do you introduce it to tracking? How do you do these things? NAVDA actually sells it in their NAVDA store. So you can buy it from NAVDA or you can just buy it from Amazon. But I guess there's a plug for old Bob. I don't make much money on it, but it's written more as a service.
Sure. I'm actually going to check it out. I was looking through my bookshelf, and I've got a lot of dog books, and I don't have yours. I've been using for my puppy stuff, generally using Joan Bailey's book, how to help gun
Yeah.
dogs train themselves. But I'm going to take a look at yours as well.
Yeah, I think mine's designed for a little higher end trainer. There's a lot of good information, but I kind of hung out on with Dave Walker with big time Brittany Pro for years, won the national I don't know how many times, and he wrote a book called Meat on the Table, Meat at the Table or Meat on the Table, and very, very, very serious dog trainer. Bob Whaley, same thing. He wrote Wing and Shot. He wrote The Making of Snakefoot, and there's and then I've got a lot of old retriever books. James Lamfrey wrote a good book for training, and I go back training versatile dogs. I go back to my retriever drills that I did with retrievers, and I really hound on people. Look, teach your dog these drills. Spend a lot of time when they're young getting a good foundation. Don't worry about putting birds out, and don't get in a hurry to put birds out. I was doing a seminar in Salt Lake, and it was 11 years ago, because I had a guy call me this year and say, my dog is 11 years old now. I bought it from you after you did this seminar in Salt Lake. And he said, I will never forget the analogy that you gave about the whorehouse. And I said, really? And I know the analogy. The analogy went like, a guy asked me, I had about 80 people in the audience, and the guy asked me, he said, so do you introduce your dogs to birds when they're, 10, 12, 8 weeks old, let them retrieve and get their mouth full of birds? I said, that's pretty dangerous, at least with my breed, and with poodle pointers or wire hairs or short hairs, it'd be pretty dangerous to do. You need to get a good foundation to where you can talk to the dog and it understands. When you say come, you say sit, you say whoa. It's that bird work can come later. And I said, all you people here in Nevada, you live right next to Nevada, are these Utah people. And I said, you realize there's a whorehouse in every town in Nevada. Can you imagine taking your 16-year-old kid with you to the whorehouse? You better leave him in the front seat of the pickup or you'll ruin him. That's like putting a dog on birds when it's 10 weeks old and letting them catch them and chase them and mouth them. And, you need to be able to control that. Next thing you know, the dog will run off and want to eat it. And anyway, this guy remembered that analogy. You can cut this out. But he remembered that analogy, and he said, I have never forgot that analogy that you gave at that seminar. But it's true, you don't get some good basic discipline going with your dog. Don't worry about the hunting till it's 5 months old. It'll all be there. It's bred into them.
Yeah, it's genetically in there. A lot of NOBDA chapters are guilty of that. You'll see somebody shows up with a 10-week-old puppy, and they're like, "Oh, let's get a quail out and put it in a tip up and just see what the puppy does." And I'm always like, "We've got an empty field here. Why don't we just let the puppy run the field?"
There you go.
And get and let the puppy see how the puppy moves with the handler. And it's 10 weeks old. It can run the field for 5 minutes. It's going to be exhausted. It's going to go back to the crate and sleep the rest of the day.
Yep, that's it.
So that's all that puppy needs to do.
Yep. When I trained gun dogs, I can tell you most of them were at least 6 months to a year old. Every dog that came to me to train, and none of them had seen a bird. None of them. And they would be 6 months to a year old. They'd never seen a bird. I'd get kind of a good old foundation going of come, sit, stay, and whatnot, and then show them birds. And I never saw a dog that didn't have that fire inside. They just didn't know it. They didn't know. They didn't know, how much enjoyment they were going to get out of chasing birds and whatnot and retrieving birds. But yeah, you don't need that. You need that foundation first.
I'm getting 2 small Munsterlander puppies here in, one of them will be in just over a week, and then the other one will be a few days right behind that one. And those dogs are not going to see birds. The first birds they'll see will be grouse up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan in the last week of September. And they're going to be young pups out, but they're going to be out hunting wild birds, and
Yeah.
they're going to do whatever they do. They'll either do great, or they'll do poorly, or they'll do somewhere in the middle. And who cares? They're going to be puppies that are 5 months old.
But you'll know what you want to do with them after that. And one of them may get this,
Yeah.
the other one may get a different adventure, just based on what you see. I had a special place just 15 minutes outside of Boise that had hundreds of valley quail on it, and I was the only guy, and I never hunted them. I just took my young dogs, 5-month-old, 6-month-old dogs out there and ran them, and just exposed them to wild quail. But and that, about 2 trips out there, and I had a dog knowing what its life purpose really was. It was finding birds, and how good a bird smelled to them and whatnot. But being able to do that's everything, just everything.
Bob, I'm going to wrap this up real quick, but I want you to hang on for a few minutes after I stop recording, because there's a couple of things that I want to run by you, if that's all right.
Yep, perfect.
But hey, thanks so much for being on this show. It really is a pleasure to have you and kind of get to meet you over the phone.
All right, it was my pleasure.
I hope you enjoyed episode number 25 of the Whoa Post podcast. And if you did, remember to leave a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Like and follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram at the Whoa Post. And you can always contact me through my website, www.thewhoapost.com, or by email, bill@thewhoapost.com. Stay steady and God bless.